Hi, I am Caitlin Nicholson, Chair of the Minnesota-Winona County Democratic Farber Labor Executive Committee. In this short video, we will discuss truth. Most people respect truth and despise lies. We are social creatures who organize ourselves around many things: sports, religion, politics, and so on. We tend to seek out people who think like us. People value truth and raise their children to be truthful. So then why are we struggling so much with our politics at this point in time? Part of the problem is what people to believe to be the truth is the truth to them, even though they may be wrong. Once we believe something to be true, it is very hard to convince us that our belief is false. Confirmation bias explains how we perceive information and determine what we believe to be true or false. So let us begin.
According to Webster's Universal English Dictionary, 2004 edition, truth, a noun, that which is true, factual, or genuine, agreement with reality.
Hi, I'm Michael Bowler. I'm a professor of global studies and world languages at Winona State University. We're going to be interviewing 5 people from diverse backgrounds, giving them all 4 identical questions.
Hi, my name's John. I'm glad to be with you today. We are here at lovely Winona State University in Winona, Minnesota. And what we're hoping to do is gain perspective on what people are thinking, what they know, what they think they know. Well, as we all think we know things, and many times we gain different information, and it helps us to make determinations on what we either believe or know for facts. Essentially, what we're trying to do is to find the truth. Hello, good afternoon. Glad to have you with us today. I appreciate your time, as well as our guest, Diana. I'm going to invite her to say a few things about herself.
Good afternoon. I'm Diana Seard. I am Winona County resident. I have all of my family, goes back generations, so all my family is here. I did go to Winona State. I did not graduate from here. I did go to St. Mary's in Rochester for a nurse's training, and I was a licensed practical nurse for 45 years here at Winona Hospital and the Winona Clinic. I'm retired now for 11 years. I am very active in the community, in the Friendship Center here in Winona, in my church, volunteer services, help with income tax, several organizations and things here in Winona that if somebody needs some help, I'm on there. I'm very privileged to be here. I was asked because I kind of speak up about a lot of things, so that's one of the reasons why I am going to be talking today.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate you being here. I'm going to ask the first question now.
Question 1. Have you ever changed your mind about something that you believe to be an important legal, moral, or spiritual value in your life? If so, what made you change your mind?
All of those, each one of them has been something in my life that I have really changed, I have to say. Legally, I had thought about, actually I wanted to be a paralegal, but my family didn't have the money in for me to go to school, so that was one of the things, is that I truly believed in following the law perfectly. I didn't want to do anything that I should never do. However, then you go into your college years and you're there and you do some things that you shouldn't have done. But I do follow the law, and I do believe that we do need a legal system that we have to have. As morals, I would not have ever considered myself thinking that I would have been in favor of supporting Black history, Black Lives Matter, as I do now. I do feel like, I had nothing against them because I never grew up with them. Winona was a total white community when I was growing up. There was no nationality, so we didn't have anything to relate to. As I got older, I think I developed prejudice because of other people around me. In the last several years, I have turned that all around, and I do believe that everybody, I don't care what color you are all the same as me. I would do anything for anybody that had whatever nationality or color that they were. Spiritual values, I have a long range of Christian background because of my family was the beginning of St. Martin's Church. My great-great-great-grandfather was one of the founders there. So of course I was raised Lutheran. As I got older and in my teen years, of course, I met a husband, my first husband, who was Catholic, and I decided I would turn Catholic, and I was also at a Catholic nurses training. I realized that I could not be Catholic and support it. I turned back to my Lutheran religion. By that time, churches had switched from Missouri Synod to Wisconsin Synod. I ended up being out of Wisconsin. I got divorced. They excommunicated me. I really turned against the Lutheran Church at that time because I felt I turned against church, period. However, my parents still belonged to St. Martin's, so I did go back there. And then as I got older, my kids were at an ELCA church in the cities, and they moved back to Winona, so now I'm at Faith Lutheran. We are a very open church, a very reconciling church. We accept anybody for whatever nationalities or gender or anything that there is. And I have good friends who are gay and lesbian. I have Catholic friends. I have people who don't go to church. I believe in inviting everybody to church. I just believe that, those are very important things. As far as my worldviews, I am kind of very unhappy with our world right now. I do not understand how we did not get on this climate thing. My great-great-great-grandchildren and all of anybody sitting around me are to listen to this. We are leaving nothing for them if we don't hurry up and get going on the bandwagon, and it's being dragged around. I don't think I have anything else on that point.
Hello, thanks for being with us again today. We're at WSU in the Crisco Commons in Minnesota, Winona, Minnesota. And we have a gentleman named Charlie that's with us today, and he's been gracious enough to spend some time with us. I'm going to introduce him and ask him to tell us a little bit about himself. Charlie, thanks for coming today.
You're welcome. As was said, my name is Charlie. I've been in Winona for about 11 and a half years. I spent the bulk of my life in central Minnesota, St. Cloud, Sauk Rapids, where I owned and operated a business, and went back and got my master's degree and applied for positions in higher education across the country, and a position came up here at WSU, and I love it here, and Winona is my home now.
Thank you. Are you ready for me to ask the first question?
Yes.
Question 1. Have you ever changed your mind about something that you believe to be an important legal, moral, or spiritual value in your life? If so, what made you change your mind?
I think having to do with spiritual, I had a medical event happen back in my early 40s, and I just looked at kind of reevaluating my life and looking at what was important, and I realized that my faith that I was practicing really didn't match with where I was thinking at the present time. So, or at that present time. So I did change, 180 from a traditional faith tradition to something a little bit more liberal, a lot liberal, and what made me change my mind, I think it had to do with kind of reassessing my life, midlife, and knowing where I wanted to be years down the line.
Hi, my name is John Steffel. I'm in the Kensington building in downtown Winona, Minnesota. I'm a resident of Minnesota, and I'm working on this project to try to understand where people find their truth. So we've been talking to some different residents of Minnesota in various age groups, various occupations, various stages of their education and their professional lives. And we hope you'll find this information helpful as you try to understand what we come to believe as the truth. We're lucky and fortunate to have with us this evening a young gentleman named Jack. He's a student here at Winona, and he's going to help us with some questions.
Hi, my name is Jack. I'm a senior here at Winona, and I'm just here to answer a few questions about, how I find my media and my political, I suppose, truths.
Thanks, Jack. I'm going to ask you the first question.
Question 1. Have you ever changed your mind about something that you believe to be an important legal, moral, or spiritual value in your life? If so, what made you change your mind?
There's a few that come to mind. I grew up, and my parents are Lutheran, and I went to church every Sunday. And in my world history class, we just were kind of learning a little bit about a religion and different philosophical movements associated with religion, and a lot of philosophers in, I can't remember if the 18th or 19th century, were talking a lot about deism and the idea that something created the universe, but not necessarily is interacting with it right now. And that idea kind of fascinated me for a little while, until I kind of realized things might be a little hopeless without some bigger figure playing a role. But that's just one thing that came to mind. Another that I can think of is, I suppose, legal. I guess my views on immigration. I also grew up in a pretty democratic house, pretty liberal, but I think my views on immigration have grown a lot more liberal as I've gotten older, and I've just had experiences with people who are not from the U.S. and have been able to immigrate, or in other cases, I'm thinking I've had the chance to work a few times on one of my friend's farms, and a lot of the laborers are not necessarily legal citizens, and it's just kind of just sort of strengthened my view on how immigration should be made easier, I suppose.
Hello. Today we're going to talk with Morella. She is a resident of Winona. She is working as well as in the midst of her education. She's going to tell us a little bit about herself, and then we're going to ask her the questions to see if we can find how people find their truth.
My name is Morella Cunningham. I was born and raised in New York City, right in Manhattan, and my mom is from Winona. She was born and raised in Winona, and I spent every summer here with my grandparents and my cousins and family members. I have been an educator for over 20 years in K through 12 systems, in higher education, and in correctional facilities. I currently am a superintendent in a correctional facility. I have been in Winona since 2018, and I have 3 kids. 1 is still in high school, 2 are in college, and that's about it.
Thank you. We're glad to have you this evening. I'm going to ask you the first question.
Question 1. Have you ever changed your mind about something that you believe to be an important legal, moral, or spiritual value in your life? If so, what made you change your mind?
I don't think I've ever changed my mind in any of those contexts, so legal, moral, or spiritual value. I feel that from a young age, those spiritual, moral, legal perspectives were always spoken about in my household. My mother was active, still is very active in her immediate community and in the community beyond, and she's always been an advocate for social justice, as had my father. And I think from a very young age, I was made aware of a lot of different things that were going on for people in my community and in communities, widespread communities. I don't think that my perspectives have changed, but I do think that as I've gotten older and met more people and my social circles have broadened, I've come to learn about different people's beliefs and how they came to those beliefs or those values. And so again, I wouldn't say that any of mine have changed, but I think what I believe at the core has been supplemented by things that I've learned along the way.
Hello, this is John Steffel. We're here today with a gentleman from Winona. His name is Chuck. I'm going to introduce him and ask him to tell us a few things about himself. And then we're going to ask him the 4 questions that we're concerned with today to help us find truth.
Sure. I grew up in Minneapolis. Was lucky enough to move to the Whitewater Valley in 1974. We spent 35 years in a historic stone house. And I was able to meet Senator Wellstone at the State Fair. I shook his hand 3 times, and I'm glad to say that he was not as liberal as I thought myself, but I think that's because he knew how to get things done, and he made compromises. So I've been described myself as independent, but I've never, I'm really a liberal Democrat, and I've never found any Republican candidate I could vote for. I was employed at Whitewater State Park. I was hired by the DNR on a temporary work program in 1975, and I kept my options open. I took advantage of opportunities. No one will ever follow my career path. I enjoyed 3 successful voluntary demotions in my DNR career, and in 2010, I retired as the only fisheries specialist with a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. I had a wonderful career with the DNR, and working for the state of Minnesota. I didn't get rich, but I had good benefits, and I really enjoyed it. Never would have been able to guess that would have been my career when I was going to school.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you the first question.
Question 1. Have you ever changed your mind about something that you believed to be an important legal, moral, or spiritual value in your life? If so, what made you change your mind?
Well, my mother was Methodist, my father Catholic. They didn't enroll us in the religious education opportunities available in the Minneapolis public school system. At some point they told us we could make up our own minds about religion. I did. I explored Christianity through prayer and attending church. Eventually I accepted Christ and was baptized, but it was more of a I'll give this a try situation. After years of participating in the Christian church, I realized that I couldn't reconcile the existence of so many world religions and the insistence that Jesus is the only way to heaven. Clearly, I have a lot to learn about world religions, but I'm comfortable with the mystery of the afterlife. And I changed my mind after encountering and engaging some of these other belief systems. I'm going to call that communication.
According to Plato and the Nature of Reality by Paul Ford, one of Plato's best-known ideas has to do with truth. In Plato's view, there was an absolute truth that existed somewhere, in some sense, in reality. Plato wanted reality to maintain certain standards, and the true forms enabled him to state that these standards existed. Are you ready for me to ask question 2?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Question 2. What comes to mind when you hear these labels? Independent, moderate, liberal, conservative, progressive, socialist, communist, left, right, etc.
All right. I consider myself to be an independent woman standing up for my rights and doing things. I was very independent as I was divorced and I had to take care of 2 children. I vowed that I would never give up my independence to any man. However, I married the second time and he kind of takes care of a lot of things I have to ask him. Where is this? How is this done? And that. And I said I wouldn't do that, but I have. And now as we've gotten older, we sit down and we have to talk about these things because I do need to know where they are and how to take care of things. I'm still very independent in all the things I do. We really don't have any objections to each other, whatever. He goes to races, I go with my friends. He doesn't object to where I go and I don't object to where he goes. So we're still kind of independent persons. I am kind of somewhat, though, on the moderate stage. I can go along with whatever people say. I mean, you know, wherever they want to go or what they think. Try to be careful about discussing. I don't be careful about my religion. I'm very much of a disciple for our Lord. I do believe in that, but I am a moderate in political things because I do have family members who are Republican and I am a Democrat, and we do not discuss those things because we do not want to care to argue with each other and what their opinions. Everybody's opinions matter, and we don't need to be fighting about that. Liberal, nah, I may be a little bit, but not a lot. I'm kind of either where it says left and right, I'm black and white. I just don't, you know, I like people who are, I don't like people who are wishy-washy. I like it's black or it's right, or it's left or it's right. We do that way, and that's the way I like to know people and have their opinions of things. I'm conservative in the fact is that I'm trying to take care of our climate. I'm trying to take care of my church, and I'm trying to take care of myself and our family on that way. But as being a conservative in the political life, I'm really not at all. So progressive, I like to look ahead. I like to see things ahead and look. I'm always looking ahead at times I have to do. I make schedules and knowing where I'm following on them. I like to see that our country is going to move ahead. I want to see progression. I want to see progression in our community, in our church, in our state, in our government. I like to see that happen. Socialist, no, I'm not that way. I kind of believe in what, you know, in socialized medicine. I'd have to say that I do go along with that. I do think we do need to develop some of that. But as far as a socialist, no, I'm not. And I already talked about how left and right. I'm left or right. I'm, you know, black or white. I want to know where people stand, and that's the way I feel about that. So.
Are you ready for me to ask question 2?
Question 2. What comes to mind when you hear these labels? Independent, moderate, liberal, conservative, progressive, socialist, communist, left, right, etc.
Well, I think just taking one at a time, independent, the way I view that label is someone who is not beholden to one political party, is not Democrat or Republican necessarily, but will vote for the candidate who best represents them. Moderate, kind of on the same line, I think. When I think of moderate, I think of our politicians in Washington and in St. Paul who work to enact laws that you need buy-in from the other side. So I think that's what comes to mind. Liberal is some way I envision liberal is someone who's open to new ideas, supporting liberty and equal rights and civil liberties as well. Conservative, as the name would imply, it's keeping to values in the past, more individual, pull your bootstraps up yourself, and individual liberty rather than community. Progressive, I look at progressive sort of in the same category as liberal. Progressives, in my opinion, don't want the status quo. They want to make sure that people are protected, and government has a role in that, I think. Socialism or socialists, I think that has been given a bad name. I think socialism is if it's embraced as the way I have read about it, I think it'd be good. Socialism is, people have private ownership rights, but the government has a really important role to play in, the safety net and the medicine, health care, along with, roads and bridges and education and the like. Left, right, that's kind of a potent, two potent terms. Left is more progressive, more liberal. Right is more conservative. Communism, I guess that what I look at that is that people don't have any private ownership rights, and everything is done by a government without any say from the people.
Second question.
Question 2. What comes to mind when you hear these labels? Independent, moderate, liberal, conservative, progressive, socialist, communist, left, right, etc.
Okay, I suppose independent. I mean, that's, centrist, kind of a rare category nowadays. It's hard to think of anyone I know that legitimately falls into that category, I suppose. So everyone's very opinionated, but I suppose I've got respect for anyone who's able to, put themselves in that party. Moderate, I don't know, I think of Manchin or Sinema, or some of the more moderate members, I guess, of the Democratic Party, because I'm more familiar with the Democratic Party. Liberal, Democratic, progressive, I think of Biden, conservative, Trump. It's, less progressive, I suppose, comes to mind shoot, what am I thinking of? I'm skipping conservative, we'll come back. Progressive, I suppose, just wanting to change things quicker. I guess liberal comes to mind, democratic. Socialist, the heavy government involvement in social programs. Maybe Bernie Sanders comes to mind. I suppose also FDR. Communist, I don't know, think of China, North Korea. I don't know, sort of dictatorship, people, I suppose people-oriented government. Good concept, but it doesn't really pan out most of the time. Left, I think of Democratic, or I think of Republican. And then coming back, conservative, I just think of Republican, right-leaning, Trump, I guess.
Question 2. What comes to mind when you hear these labels? Independent, moderate, liberal, conservative, progressive, socialist, communist, left, right, etc.
Well, I think the first thing that my first reaction is that they are labels. And I feel, at least in my experience, when we attach labels to things or to people, that skews the way we, or that may skew the way we see people, or the degree to which we may choose to interact with them. So for example, if I am a right-wing conservative, I may be less inclined, or if I'm a left-wing liberal, I may be less inclined to engage with or listen to or be interested in the ideas and thoughts of somebody who's at the opposite end of the spectrum. So I think it's really dangerous when we label people, and again, all of those terms that were mentioned I think of as labels. And not to say that somebody can't be a communist or a liberal or an independent, but in my experience, I've caught myself thinking, oh, I don't really want to hear what this person has to say because he or she is whatever. And then reflecting on that and saying, well, I should want to know what he or she has to say because it's something different than what I believe, or it may be something different than I believe. And maybe I can learn from that. I can learn about why that person has that perspective, whether it's a perspective that I agree with or if it's something very far removed from what I agree with or believe in. So again, just in terms of, in the context of those terms, I just think it's really dangerous to label people. We always label things. It helps us categorize, and it helps us keep things kind of neat. Again, when I say us, I mean me, in my experience. But things aren't neat, and things are like onions. There are many layers. And so if I'm a conservative or I'm a liberal, it doesn't just end there. So I think those labels have, over the years, meant for me, on the surface it's a label, but that it's something that I need to dig in deeper to. Also, just thinking about the term communist and socialist, in the grand scheme of things, as I was growing up and even as an adult, the pejorative, or I guess I should say the negative connotation with communism or with socialism, I've always experienced that in kind of, I guess I would say, for lack of a better term right now, in society, not within my own social circles or my own family, but that if somebody's a communist or a socialist, it's bad. Again, that's just what I think of when I think of those terms being used. And I think that's a lot of the challenge with where we are today, that immediately you associate, whether it's communist or liberal, it's with being bad. If it's a thing that you aren't used to or that you don't understand or that you haven't taken the time to explore, it's bad. And even if you do those things sometimes, it may still be, the term may still be bad, but I think at least that exploration, allowing ourselves to explore, which is something we all need to do a little bit more of, is helpful.
Question 2. What comes to mind when you hear these labels? Independent, moderate, liberal, conservative, progressive, socialist, communist, left, right, etc.
When I think of conservative nowadays, right-wing labels, it has come to mean to me short-sighted and selfish. In contrast, I think of liberals and progressives as caring for others and the future. I'm a socialist because I believe government has the responsibility to care for the entire population. I hate the phrase, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And I wonder if any Amish communities see themselves as communists.
According to the Simple English Wikipedia, absolute truth is something that is true at all times and in all places. It is something that is always true, no matter what the circumstances. Absolute truths are discovered, not invented.
Truth is a constant, an absolute, that may or may not be known to any or all of us. Truth should be sought by all and not be manipulated into a partial truth, or even worse, a lie by anyone to fit a narrative or promote personal gain. Truth should be supported by verifiable facts. Truth is truth. Words matter, and there are no alternative truths, no matter how many websites support them. Here lies the problem. What people believe to be true is the truth to them, even though in actuality, there can only be one truth. What they believe may or may not be true. The earth is flat was believed to be a true statement, but in reality was false, even though most, if not all of the people on earth at that time, believed it to be true. Additional evidence and information allowed us to revise and better understand that the earth is not flat. Our current truth problem goes back many election cycles. In a rare media interview during the Bush administration, Karl Rove bragged about annually reading the book The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli that promoted the distribution of misinformation to his subjects. The book claims if you repeat a lie often enough, a large percentage of the population will believe it.
We appreciate your time today. I'm going to ask question number 3.
Question 3. What should be the role of government with respect to healthcare, education, business, police, fire, and prisons?
I believe that the government needs to be parts of things, but we certainly need to have a input and a control of some of the things that happen that I don't like a lot of things that our government has led to do that we have ended up being in trouble for it. That are they really listening to me, little Diana, or big Diana, in Winona, Minnesota, and listening to other people that there are other ways to solve things. I know we can't get input and this person's talking to that person and try to get the things done, but yet somehow our government needs to listen to some of these things because things have happened in this last year, 5 years, and 10 years that they haven't listened to other people. I've just finished reading a wonderful book that talks about these people in Colorado who stood up for their environment and all the things that they did. Yes, they need to be listening to that, and they have been able to fight that. That's really, really important. In our health care, our government needs to get more involved, and I especially am a person who's looking at mental health care. It has really dragged their legs on it. We need housing for mental health people. We need more doctors. We need more psychiatrists, more social workers. I directly have a person in my family with mental health, and it has been a horrible, horrible struggle for 6 years. No housing, no places to go. But Winona, we don't even have a place now anymore that when he has a trial or a episode happen, it has to go to La Crosse or has to go to Rochester, and now La Crosse doesn't even have a place for them. So it's very, very difficult that we need more mental health coverage and care. And I do go on the mental health bus from Winona here, that we go up to the state capitol on Mental Health Day, and I do go up there and we do see our legislatures. We are part of the whole in the rotunda there, that we do stand up for this, that needs support. And all of these people that have mental health problems, we need to support them and take care of them. They don't realize that they're still very important people, whether they have their problems or not. In education, we need more free education funding for our people going to colleges. That there is so many people that would, and if they would just learn that there are some mental health people that need some help to go to school. They need help counselors and people to help keep them in school. How beneficial these people would be, that if there's someone paid attention to them and they were able to, I know of one lady in particular that had schizophrenia, I believe she had, and she turned out to be a good social worker. And I just think that how important this is, that we need people like that, and we need the government behind them to help them. In businesses, I think we have to have the government being part of that, or they're not going to be controlled, and they're just, I don't know how to put that exactly, but they need some control over businesses, definitely. Police, I can say that if I was in St. Paul, Minneapolis, when all this went around, I would have definitely voted to keep the police. I don't understand how anybody, no matter who you are and where you live, can think that our lives can function without a police department. We need somebody overseeing all of these things. We need them to show up for things. A common person like myself can't go out and do help with things, accidents, all of those things that happen. We definitely need a police department and a fire department right along with that, the same thing. Prisons, I have been reading so much about. I mean, there's people that have been committed to prisons when they were teens for doing some minor offenses and actually ended up on death row, and how we need to have somebody looking at all this and working to help those people. And there has been people recently that have been in the news that have been released from prison from having found out their minor convictions, and they could have been electrocuted or whatever for some minor offense that would have never, not in this day and age, done. But we have a lot of black people who are sitting in prison that do not need to be there. And we need education in prison, so the governments have to provide this.
I'm going to ask question 3 now.
Question 3. What should be the role of government with respect to healthcare, education, business, police, fire, and prisons?
I think government should have an integral role in all those things, and healthcare being the number one item. Most industrialized nations have universal health care. There's no reason why we can't. The government can't, do that. Education, public education is a valuable resource, and the government has a role to play in funding the public education, as well as police and fire departments and other resources that we all use. I think I think there's a role for police and fire and firefighters, just like there are roles for other government agencies to help out.
Question 3. What should be the role of government with respect to healthcare, education, business, police, fire, and prisons?
Healthcare, I guess I have more of a socialist perspective, but I think the government should be at least helping out a good bit more than they are currently with healthcare, because it's hard to see a lot of people who might not have insurance through their jobs have to struggle through paying just loads of money for healthcare when I feel like should be provided. And yeah, that raise taxes, but I think it'd be worth it for sure. Education, I think it would make sense for government sponsored state schools, but I can understand their reasoning, and I suppose that's more of a complicated issue for me, and that's kind of hard to think about. For business, the government definitely should play a part. It's hard to say exactly unless you're looking at certain industries, how much government should play, but I suppose government regulation is important, especially in like industries where, like, I'm kind of thinking of the food industry where previously, like, there weren't many regulations, and like, when that's the case, then like corporations tend to get away with a lot more, and I think it's just a dangerous thing if there's not regulations. Police, I'm I guess in favor of like less funding towards like traditional police and more towards like sort of like a more social, like social work type, like de-escalation methods. And I understand that police are necessary and that's an important thing, but there definitely could also be like some money allocated to other like de-escalation tactics, because often like if the police get involved then it just becomes violent. Well, there's I guess two things with prisons that I'm thinking of is like that private prisons shouldn't be like legal in the US, and that like most prisons like are not actually helping people improve or like teaching them like not to, because as soon as, give me a second, I need to.
That's fine.
I suppose with prisons, it's just hard to see how like putting someone in prison is going to actually help them stop like doing whatever put them there in the first place. And I think like a lot more, not necessarily therapy, but like sort of mental help, I feel like would help like put a lot of people in prison back onto the streets in like much better way, I suppose.
Morella, question 3.
Question 3. What should be the role of government with respect to healthcare, education, business, police, fire, and prisons?
I think that government should be by the people and for the people. I think the role of government should be a critical role. I think government should engage people, communities in the work that they do. I remember I was traveling around at one point, and I was in Sweden, and it was an amazing place to be, but everything was so expensive. And I remember thinking, oh, it must be terrible living here because everything is so expensive. And a Swede I met said, no, we pay a little bit more in taxes, but that's because we then have dental care or health care or child care or whatever it was. And I said, oh, that wouldn't be too bad a deal. And I thought about that as I traveled around to different places. I just happened to be Eurailing in Europe, and many people I ran into, at least some aspect, whether it was education or healthcare or childcare, seemed to be a focus of the government, and a focus of the government really supporting and meeting the needs of people. And so I think that when I think of the United States, I think about people who think the government should be more involved, people who think the government should be completely out of the picture, and I really think that if the government was very involved and supported and facilitated opportunities for people to get involved, that we would be a much stronger nation. And I don't mean necessarily all of the same opinion or anything like that, but I feel that when people are treated well, people are having their needs met, basic needs, housing, shelter, met, that they can then kind of go to the next level and become more successful and have a better quality of life. So I've heard, we've all heard the term of like people can pull themselves up by their bootstraps, and then the comment about, well, what if they don't have boots? So I really think government should invest in people, and then there should be that expectation that people then invest in what is going on in their communities. I have met a lot of people who say, oh, I'm not political, and I think about that, and everything we do is political. If I'm paying taxes, if I'm using the roads, if I'm sending my kid to public school. So I feel that from starting at a very young age, we as Americans, and I don't just say citizens, but anybody growing up in America should have the opportunity and the experience to become involved with government. So I think in Minnesota now you get civics maybe in 12th grade, maybe 11th. I think that from the time kids start school, there should be that interest developed and I guess groomed in what's going on in your classroom, in your school, in your neighborhood, in your community, and how can you become involved so that by the time kids are seniors in high school, they have been involved for 12 years in everything that's going on in their local communities, and that hopefully they realize the value that their work has on increasing the quality of life for everybody and engaging with government, and that government entities see the value in the people and are more invested in creating a better quality of life for people.
Thank you. Question number 3.
Question 3. What should be the role of government with respect to healthcare, education, business, police, fire, and prisons?
Well, I think the government should provide universal health care. That's the first and most important thing I'd like to mention. And good public education. It should regulate business and fund police, fire departments, and prisons. There's no place in my mind for private prisons for profit. We should decriminalize minor offenses such as drug possession to reduce the need for prisons. We should be embarrassed about the relative size of our prison population.
According to Webster's Universal English Dictionary 2004 edition, fact, a noun, a thing known to have happened or to exist. Reality, a piece of verifiable information.
A fact, like truth, is a constant, an absolute that may or may not be known to any or all of us. The information about a fact should be sought by all and not be manipulated into a partial fact, or even worse, a lie to fit a narrative or to promote personal gain. Facts are facts. Words matter. No matter how many websites support them, there are no alternative facts.
According to Introduction of Psychology, 10th edition, 2014, by James W. Collott, confirmation bias. We often err by accepting a hypothesis and then looking for evidence to support it, instead of considering other possibilities. This tendency, the confirmation bias, occurs in all walks of life. People listen mostly to others who agree with them on matters of science, politics, or religion, and they accuse their opponents of bias.
Spin and framing became popular words for both parties, and over time, these terms led to out-and-out lies. Our last president turned this into an art form and weaponized it. It was used to stir people up and make them believe they somehow were being taken advantage of.
We have one more question. Are you ready for question 4?
Yes.
Thank you.
Question 4. How can we, the people, make government better?
I think that I answered part of that along with the other one, is that we as the people, we need to stay involved. We need to stay on top of them. We need to we need to be part of the elections. We need to show up and we need to support the candidate that is going to do right things. And after the person is even elected, we need to be on top of that, that we do not like things that you're doing. And it needs to be that, there is some control over that. We need to educate our children that they also need to be part of our legal system and that these things are being taken care of, that they are active in some part of their community or state, and that it isn't just, well, that went on, but I didn't bother to go and vote. It's very important to vote. That every vote counts, and as it showed up in this last election of our president, it really was very important that people got out and voted. You need to be on boards whether it's your church boards or community boards or city boards or state or whatever, be part of it. Be active in those things. Voice your opinion. Open your mouth. Don't be wishy-washy, as I say. Say what you think. I mean, I may not be saying all the right things today and what people have wanted me to say, but it's coming from my heart and what I think. And I think there's a lot of other people in our community who need to do that. Do the right things. Be sure that you're doing and living a good life, and you're living the right life and the legal life, and you're supporting that.
Yeah, I'm going to ask question 4 now.
Question 4. How can we, the people, make government better?
By electing folks that represent a wide spectrum of the population, to elect people of color, of various gender identities, and the government is only as good as the people that are working at it or in it. I think government is given a bad rap, but they do a lot of good. I think we need to get involved to make it better at a local level, by attending rallies, writing to our Congress people, and trying to make sure those people who don't have the safety nets or the financial wherewithal to make sure that they're protected.
The last question, Jack, is
Question 4. How can we, the people, make government better?
I think what's most important is being informed on the government and what's happening, because I see a lot of people, especially my peers, who just don't seem to care at all about what's happening, which is pretty dangerous, because if you're not aware of what's happening and you're a voter, you're kind of you're not doing the right thing for yourself if you're not making your opinions kind of heard by voting, and not staying up to date is a dangerous thing, as well as focusing only on one side of issues, I guess. And so it's important to take into consideration other people's values and have conversations with people with opposing views, even if it's really uncomfortable and difficult, because that's really what's gonna sort of help us all understand each other, rather than just butting heads all the time.
the last question is
Question 4. How can we, the people, make government better?
So I think I was speaking just moments ago about becoming more engaged in what's going on in our communities. I don't necessarily love going to, for example, school board meetings, but I have hardly missed a school board meeting in the last 2 years. And I think that it's really important that people go to meetings like school board meetings or city council meetings or county board meetings, whatever the case may be. They might be long, they might be drawn out, you might have better things to do, or you might have things that aren't better but that you have to do. But there are important decisions being made at these types of meetings, in these sessions. And when not everybody's sitting at the table, sometimes decisions are made that might not be made if people are sitting at the table and are having their voices heard. So I really think that we, the people, need to become more involved in what's going on in our local communities, and then progressively in the greater communities, statewide, nationwide, and even globally. I think you can't wave a magic wand for that to happen. I think it's something that will take time and has to be approached from multiple, I guess I would say, I don't know if it's trajectories, but when kids are coming into kindergarten, talking about the responsibility to classroom and school and community, kind of like what I spoke about earlier. When kids are in high school, what is their responsibility to their school community, to their communities that they live in. So really, we the people need to be more involved, and I don't know, I guess I often question, how do we get people more involved? Because I have friends, I have family members who are like, that's not for me. But really just figuring out ways to get our fellow community members involved and to ourselves be involved.
Thank you. Question 4.
Question 4. How can we, the people, make government better?
Well, I have a simple answer. We should communicate with our representatives and serve as opportunities present themselves.
In conclusion, we the people have a problem. The proof of this situation is borne out in the extreme differences between people. Every one of us believes things to be true, with often only our confirmation bias to rely on. Each and every one of us has a personal responsibility to spend more time researching our firmly held beliefs that are controversial. Why are they controversial? What is the original source of the information that is problematic? This problem is tearing our society and our families apart. Social media is not helping. Some news media outlets are not helping, and some politicians are not helping. All of us must work to find a solution to this problem. We, the people, need to take this problem on and come up with solutions based on evidence.